But yeah, just an update on what we've been doing with the app framework and the why and the how, because we've had some fairly significant detours over the last couple of years, I suppose. So yeah, my name's Daniel. I'm the graphics lead at Collabora, and I've been working within AGL for the past few years. So just for some background on where we were originally, you know, the app framework goes back around 6 years, and as Walt and Dan were saying, back into Tizen as well, was a substantial part of it. And why have we been doing all of this work over the past couple of years? Originally, I apologize that the diagrams aren't showing, by the way. Originally, the idea of the AGL UCB was that we would have a representative IVI HMI system, and we'd be able to develop all of this infrastructure that the different tier ones and OEMs would use. And we've had this UCB with a lot of different focus areas and experiments that branched out from the UCB. But what we've seen, especially in the years 2018 and 19, is that we have the instrument cluster, e.g., like we just saw from Yamaguchi-san and Kurokawa-san, are developing a very separate system to the UCB. We've had the IVI production readiness, e.g., have been formed, and their sort of raison d'etre is to release an entire base system which overlaps a lot of the UCB's functionality. Now we have the container and mesh expert group. We've got the virtualization expert group, which Jerry will cover later on, things like vehicle to cloud as well. And so we've really lost this sense that all of this work, which was descended from Tizen IVI, is really the base of the whole of AGL. Another issue we had was kind of technical debt, really. It became clear that Qt was just not a viable base that we could continue using for not just the demonstrator, but as a technology platform. As Walt alluded to, there's been a lot of effort around Flutter, and this is under really heavy development, but it's not there yet. And as Jose and Lorenzo are going to tell us later, WAM, the web application manager to host HTML5 apps, is being rewritten most of the time. And so it's come to a very difficult point for the UCB, where it's hard for us to be able to say in the same way that we did in 2016, this is the base of AGL. These are the technologies that everyone uses and everyone agrees upon. And so what value really does the UCB give us? This is the question we started asking over a year ago, and this presentation is the culmination of those questions and a lot of work we've done since. One of the other things for the UCB is that it's a way for AGL to bring what we can from the automotive industry, as Bob was saying, back into the upstream communities. So our work on Wayland and Western, the work on Pipewire, all of those kinds of efforts have really gone back into upstream open source projects which have benefited from automotive industry expertise. And one of the tensions we had is, again, Walt put it very well, we don't get the same benefit if we do a lot of very AGL specific development. You know, if we create our own service management or communication frameworks or UI frameworks, this doesn't really benefit the open source community because it duplicates a lot of things which are already there. And it doesn't necessarily benefit our members if they have different focus areas as well. So the conclusion we had a year ago was to think really what is the value of the UCB to our members, and to reduce the maintenance cost and to bring us closer to upstream by rethinking some of the technical parts we'd inherited around the app framework and service management in particular. So through 2021, we had a big rebase to eliminate as much AGL specific work as possible, to focus on the upstream projects we have. Systemd as a very well established service management framework, which can start and supervise and sandbox applications around Wayland and libwestern and the small AGL compositor, where we use a very standard window management and presentation framework. And then we have a component called app launch D, which is kind of the smallest thing we can do to glue together systemd and Wayland and libwestern and the applications we have, just as a kind of life cycle management. We did some experiments in containerization as well. We were looking to Flatpak as a bridge towards more common container technologies like OCI and Docker. And we got some useful learnings from that. But our conclusion is that it wasn't a good use of time to continue making the UCB something which could launch containerized applications, because the demand was not there for it. So if you're interested in the containerization aspect, we do have some of those materials available, and the presentations and the work and the patches we did. They're all still out there for you to get if you like. So where we've come to, this now in the second quarter of 2022 with Marlin just having been released, we have radically replaced the application framework based around those core technologies of systemd and Wayland and Western and this very small app launch D component. We do see Marlin as more of a technology preview of what the new AGL-based system looks like, and not necessarily a complete replacement for all of the functionality that we had. And yeah, as I said, the main components are the app launch D, which is based around lifecycle management and activation, allowing us to have applications more dynamically started and stopped and switched between. And the AGL compositor, which is just a thin framework on top of libwestern, which allows us to manage the HMI and how the windows are presented and all of this kind of thing. In terms of the IVI HMI demos we have, the green machine is still alive. We do have something to show at CES, as Walt explained, and there's more information in the release notes for Marlin as well. The Qt demos are partly functional, so you can still see and interact with the UI. We have some integration with WAM as well for the HTML apps, which we'll go into a bit more detail of. For Flutter, we don't have this integration yet, just because Flutter itself is under very heavy development at the moment, but we obviously expect this to continue through 2022 and to be able to have a Flutter-based UI. So the core issue with WAM and the HTML apps, as I said, is there's an assumption in the WAM code base and design from WebOS that one context will be one application which has one window. And this isn't always true for automotive, because you might want to share content between domains or have a more composed UI coming from some different sources. So we discovered that WAM needed some rework to integrate into the window management and the application management design we had. That's something that Jose will cover in more detail in about an hour, I think. And yeah, this is something that's ongoing, but WAM itself is under very heavy development. So I think that might be a bit of a bumpy road for 2022. In terms of the rest, we haven't replaced the old SMAC and Sinara Tizen IVI solution for security. The framework we have, we can build on this framework and integrate, like Walt said, technologies like SELinux. But this is something that will really need some focused development effort as well as maintenance. So if you would like to join the effort and help us with this SELinux demonstrator or any other security work, please join us in the App Framework Expert group. Similarly, we have not replaced the ERPC system that the old App Framework had. Our thinking is that we should be encouraging with the unified code base, the adoption of more common open source technologies like gRPC, and focusing on the areas where we can really add value. So a very strong focus on reusing technology that's already there. So for the rest of the year, as we're looking to needlefish and octopus and all of the other seafood, a big part of this is recognizing that AGL's development focus has shifted, and that the effort and the interest is no longer around this common IVI HMI. We have the use cases like Yamaguchi-san was showing us in the instrument cluster, where all of the separate components of the system really need to come together in an integrated way, and that we need to embrace the heterogeneous use cases instead of trying to keep the UCB as just one isolated component. And really, we're focusing on the base area. So we want the UCB to continue to be useful to all the profiles, rather than starting with the UCB and then removing all of the AGL specific effort because it's too focused on IVI. So we've now kind of come back to this exploration stage almost. Last year, we had a focus on development. We had the experiments with containerization. And now, including in the face-to-face last week, we've been working with the other expert groups, such as the container and mesh and virtualization. And one potential area we have is that we can make the UCB be sort of cloud native itself. So to support the service mesh idea that we have in cloud systems, that we also have with multi-ECU designs and multi-cell designs that we have from the IC and virtualization. And can we use this and our development work in the UCB to be able to help the members of AGL who are using it transition towards the cloud native automotive design. So this is where we're currently discussing and trying to come up with plans for the rest of the year and the next couple of releases, that we want the UCB to really be common and help the expert groups like IC and PR and container and mesh and virtualization, rather than just duplicate the work. So yeah, our focus as well, again, we have the dual purpose in AGL. It's not just helping the different expert groups and people who are developing on AGL, but we want to help the rest of the open source community as well. So we will be trying to focus on open source technologies and projects that we can reuse and integrate, and come back to the concept where we show the members what is the current leading edge within open source development and how they can use this in a product context. And we can connect the members back to these open communities so they can understand the issues we have when we try to use this for productization, and help improve those projects as well. Yeah, so that is a quick app framework update. Again, apologies for the lack of diagrams, but we are here in the app framework expert group and discussing with all the other expert groups. So if you have some expertise or some interest or even just some use cases, we'd be really happy to talk about those with you and, you know, help push the AGL focus of connecting open source as well as the industry. Thanks.